The movie begins with Malorie Hayes informing two children, referred to as boy and girl, that they are embarking on a perilous journey across the water. She emphasizes the importance of keeping their blindfolds on. Malorie takes a box containing her pet birds and leads the kids outside following a string trail. They reach the boat and board it on the river. 5 years earlier, Malorie, an artist who is pregnant, receives a visit from her sister Jessica. The two watch a news report about unexplained mass suicides originating in Siberia and spreading across Europe. Jessica notices a painting by Malorie that she interprets as symbolizing a lack of connection. However, she reassures Malorie that things will be different with the baby. Jessica offers to accompany Malorie to the doctor. Malorie visits Dr. Lapham, and she and Jess share jokes about drinking while pregnant. However, Lapham doesn't find the comments amusing and suggests the option of adoption if Malorie feels unprepared for parenthood. As they leave the office, they witness a woman, whom they had noticed earlier, acting erratically and banging her head against a glass window. They realize that the mysterious phenomenon affecting people in Europe and Siberia has now reached America. Amidst the chaos on the streets, with people crashing their cars, Jess drives Malorie away. However, Jess's behavior takes a drastic turn as her eyes change color, indicating fear of something unseen. Malorie desperately tries to keep her sister on the road, but Jess loses control, leading to a crash. They survive the accident, but Jess remains entranced, and Malorie is helpless as her sister steps in front of a truck. Malorie, amidst the chaos, is knocked over and falls in front of a house. A woman named Lydia comes out to assist Malorie, despite objections from her husband Douglas. However, Lydia too falls into a trance, seemingly communicating with her mother. In a shocking turn of events, Lydia walks into a burning car, leading to an explosion. Malorie is helped up by a man named Tom, and they seek refuge in the house. Inside the house, they find others who have sought shelter, including Greg, the homeowner, Charlie, Felix, Cheryl, and a couple named Jason and Samantha. The tranquility is disrupted when Jason and Samantha, alarmed by their son's distressed voice over the phone, decide to leave the house. The group shares their experiences with those affected by the mysterious force. Charlie suggests that demons take the form of one's deepest sorrows. They understand that the entity is invisible, causing suicide upon direct gaze. Malorie, recounting Jess's tragedy, is comforted by Tom. The group secures the house, boarding doors and covering windows with newspapers to avoid looking outside. In the present day, after 6 hours on the river, Malorie and the children navigate the dark river. She tries to reach out to others on the radio, and unsettlingly she begins to hear the entity whispering her name. Back in the past, a survivor named Olympia desperately asks to be let into the house. Douglas is hesitant, but Malorie grabs a rifle for precaution. After careful consideration, they allow Olympia inside, realizing that she is also pregnant. Greg volunteers to monitor the situation outside by observing the transmitters in the house. As he sits in front of the computers waiting for any signs, it appears that he sees something on the monitors. Suddenly, the others hear a thumping sound from the room. They rush upstairs to witness Greg intentionally tipping himself over, smashing his head against an edge and killing himself. In response, the group destroys the computer monitor. Later that night, Olympia attempts to engage Malorie in a conversation about potential baby names, but Malorie prefers to be left alone. While walking around, she thinks she hears a thumping noise in the house, only to discover it's Lucy and Felix engaging in a romantic encounter. 14 hours on the river. Malorie hears the voice of a man calling out, claiming it's safe to take the blindfolds off. However, Malorie orders the kids not to do so. The man insists he has food and has seen the entity, reassuring them there's no need to be afraid. Malorie, skeptical and cautious, takes out her gun and fires blindly just before the man attacks her, attempting to remove her blindfold. In self-defense, Malorie fights back and ultimately kills him with a machete. Back in the past, the group, facing a dwindling food supply and the absence of help, decides to venture to the supermarket where Charlie used to work. Charlie, who had locked up the place during the chaotic events, guides Malorie, Tom, Douglas, Lucy, and himself. They cover the windows and rely on GPS for navigation. While driving, they sense they might be passing over dead bodies but try to ignore it. The GPS alerts them to the proximity of the entity, indicating danger. Tom skillfully drives them away from the threat. Upon reaching the supermarket, they gather as much food as possible, and Malorie decides to take some birds as pets. Suddenly, they hear the voice of Charlie's co-worker, Fish Fingers, locked in a freezer, pleading to be released. He rambles about the beauty of the entity and the need to see it. As Fish Fingers breaks free, Lucy, Tom, and Douglas try to restrain him. Charlie, witnessing the entity, understands his fate and charges towards Fish Fingers, leading them both into the freezer where Charlie succumbs, allowing the rest to return home. Fish Fingers' voice continues to beg for release. During that night, Malorie and Douglas briefly connect, sharing their personal challenges. The rest of the group hears what seems to be the sound of a car being driven away. Investigating the garage, they discover that the car is gone, along with Lucy and Felix. 24 hours on the river. Malorie takes a break from rowing, but when she resumes, the boat collides with a sunken truck, causing Boy to fall into the water. Malorie quickly retrieves him and attempts to warm him, but the supplies have fallen into the river. Left with limited resources, Malorie leaves the kids in the boat and ventures into the woods to find food. In a building, she encounters strange movements, seemingly influenced by the entity. Malorie exits the building, but the entity continues to whisper her name. In an attempt to fend it off, she fires her gun, prompting Girl to leave the boat and join her. Malorie scolds Girl for leaving as they return to the boat. Back in the past, Tom shares his experiences with Malorie, recounting his time stationed in Iraq. He describes how amidst the chaos, he and his comrades would observe a man escorting his children to school. As they spend time together, Malorie and Tom begin to develop feelings for each other. Olympia makes the decision to let a desperate man named Gary into the house. The group reacts with hostility, subjecting Gary to intense scrutiny and interrogation. Gary shares his harrowing encounter with escaped mental patients and emphasizes the danger posed by people willingly exposing themselves to the creatures. Douglas, skeptical of Gary's story, attempts to expel him at gunpoint, but Cheryl intervenes, rendering Douglas unconscious and allowing Gary to stay. They confine Douglas to the garage. Olympia, feeling remorseful, apologizes and expresses her fears of being a burden. Malorie reassures her and promises to care for her baby if something happens. In a gesture of kindness, Malorie gives Olympia a Hello Kitty toy for the baby. 38 hours on the river, Girl holding the Hello Kitty toy reveals her to be Olympia's daughter. Malorie, anticipating the perilous rapids ahead, gathers herself and the kids under a blanket. She cautions them about the imminent danger and the necessity of navigating the rapids with open eyes. Both kids volunteer, but Malorie, unwilling to sacrifice either of them, opts for a blindfolded approach to brave the rapids together. Back in the past, in the midst of the chaos, both Malorie and Olympia go into labor. Tom and Cheryl assist the women, while Gary, one of the affected individuals obsessed with making others see the creatures, seizes Malorie's birds and places them in the fridge. He proceeds to tear off the papers covering the windows, revealing the outside, a move observed by Douglas. As Olympia gives birth to a girl and Malorie gives birth to a boy, Gary, driven by his compulsion, forces the blinds open in front of Olympia, leading to her tragic end. In a selfless act, she hands her baby to Malorie before taking her own life by jumping out the window. Gary then coerces Cheryl to open her eyes to the outside, resulting in her tragic demise with scissors. Douglas enters the room with a rifle, but the challenge of keeping his eyes open prevents him from taking action. Fearful of harming Malorie and the babies, he hesitates. Gary, ruthless in his obsession, kills Douglas with the scissors. Tom, witnessing the unfolding tragedy, attempts to grab the rifle along with Gary. 2 gunshots ring out, but Tom survives and goes to be with Malorie and the babies. 5 years later, just before the start of the film, Malorie and Tom share a living space, caring for the 2 children. However, Tom confronts Malorie about her emotional distance and refusal to give the children names. The 2 are alerted by the presence of people outside who drive without blindfolds or covers on the windows. Malorie prepares her warning system outside as a precaution for the children. During the night, Malorie and Tom pick up a radio transmission from a man named Rick, who claims to be at a secure compound with ample supplies and food. Rick provides them with instructions on navigating down the river to reach the compound, emphasizing the perilous nature of the journey with children. He advises them to use their sight for navigation and mentions that they should follow the sound of birds to locate the place. Tom expresses the desire to go to the compound, but Malorie is wary, suspecting it could be a trap. As survivors from earlier make it to the house, Tom confronts them while Malorie and the kids manage to escape safely. The survivors, led by someone known as the Whistling Marauder, demand Tom remove his blindfold. Witnessing Malorie and the children, Tom opens fire, eliminating 3 of the marauders but getting shot himself in the process. Despite being affected by the entity, Tom fights it long enough to kill the leader before turning the gun on himself, signaling to Malorie that he's gone. Malorie gathers the kids and prepares to continue their journey on the river. 42 hours on the river. Approaching the rapids rapidly, they navigate the turbulent waters, but the boat flips over, causing everyone to fall into the water. Malorie calls out for the kids and locates Boy in the water. Meanwhile, Girl has reached the land and is ringing a bell, helping Malorie find her. The trio walks through the woods, where the entity whispers and exerts its influence to make them see, but Malorie's determination prevails. She convinces the kids not to look and guides them by following the sound of the birds. They eventually reach the compound, with the entity trying to thwart them until someone opens the door, allowing them to enter safely. Malorie, along with the kids, undergoes eye checks and is granted entry into the compound. They meet Rick, and Malorie discovers that the compound is a school for the blind, providing protection from the entities. Within the compound, they encounter Dr. Lapham, who warmly welcomes them. When asked for their names, Malorie, for the first time, names the kids. Girl is called Olympia, honoring her mother, and Boy is named after Tom. Malorie proudly declares herself as their mother. She then releases the birds from her box, allowing them to join the others in the sanctuary. Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications to catch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.